Hello and welcome to my second World's Foods presentation. This presentation is dedicated to quinoa. Quinoa has been around for 3 to 5,000 years before Christ and has been found in the tombs of rulers of Chile. Unfortunately, quinoa fell suspect to the Columbus era where Spaniards would come and kill indigenous people, and so the grain was widely forgotten. The grain is full of nutrients. There's a lot of different nutrients, but it is high in carbs, protein, uh, and fiber. So I found two research articles that relate quinoa to disease. And so it has been found to lower cholesterol, uh, and it helps prevent cardiovascular disease. And then the second source I found demonstrated that malnourished children who were given a diet of quinoa for 15 days uh, were noticeably healthier compared to children who were in the control group that were malnourished and weren't given quinoa after 15 days. Uh, and that's because it has an insulin like growth factor, so it is a good supplement for children. So the quality of quinoa has a pretty long shelf life unless you wet it. Once it's wet, it'll rot and grow mildew or mold. And you don't want to keep it near heat because it'll start to cook and then it'll lose its protective casing. Quinoa is very resilient and can grow in different environments, and it is very sustainable using crop rotation. However, as most fruits, vegetables, and anything that is grown today, it can be overproduced and it can be overgrown in specific areas without crop rotation and lead to the depletion of nutrients in soil. And then the other negative effect of the globalization is that it that farmers use the same gene almost, and so effectively a disease could come through and wipe out all the quinoa. My dish I made was quinoa adamalada. I couldn't find much information about the historical aspects of the dish or its traditionality or anything really important, but it does uh, originate from Peru and is on many websites that recommend you try it if you visit Peru. So these are the preparations. It's 1 tablespoon oil. I just used spray oil in a pan. 1 garlic clove. I just used pre-chopped garlic that comes in a spice container. And then what's really important is the ají amarillo paste, um, and it is like a chili flavor. It's pretty spicy, and it's not spicy, but it has flavor and adds texture and depth to the food. Then quinoa, salt and pepper, evaporated milk, and then the other staple ingredient is the queso fresco, um, and it's cheese, and it is so delicious in the food. It's not hard to make. I just dumped everything into a pot with water and let it cook. You kind of boil it for 5 minutes or until it's boiling, and then you turn the heat down to half heat and let it cook for 30 minutes, and then it comes out like a soup almost. But I made the mistake where I thought it was supposed to be a soup and it was supposed to be more liquidy, but the quinoa itself expands and becomes soup-like. So it's like a like a wet rice almost. And then once that wet rice mixture is made, then you put the cheese, the evaporated milk, and parsley in. And then I ended up putting more of the ají amarillo paste uh, to make it a little bit spicier. And then I have a rice cooker, so I just made white rice in my rice cooker. Um, The site I used for the recipe didn't quite have the nutritional facts, so this is how I just found a similar dish. Um, this dish has approximately twice as many servings, so my dish was around 300 calories. This one's around 600. Um, it is a pretty hearty meal and it's pretty healthy as long as you don't use too much salt. Of course, it varies for each time you make it. And so this is what the dish looks like. Mine isn't as yellow as it appeared online, which is fine, and it kind of didn't look appetizing, and so I was sad I spent a lot of effort and time on it, but it ended up tasting amazing. Unfortunately, I made the dish for myself, and so a lot of the ingredients are only half used and kind of went to waste, and so ingredients alone cost me $20, which is pretty expensive. However, with 1 cup of quinoa and 1 cup of rice, I ended up making 5 meals worth of it. And so I think if you were a single student making this dish, you could use all the ingredients and then freeze a bunch of it. Um, and since I made 5 meals worth of it, I ate it for 2 days, 2.5 days, and I was noticeably less bloated and I felt a lot thinner. And it also reheated very nicely. I'd recommend just making the quinoa and then um, freezing it or storing it however you want, and then making rice as you go along when you eat it, so then you can have fresh rice. Because rice is very easy to make. So the comparison between this dish and American dish is that it has no meat, just dairy is the only animal product, and so it was surprising on what a more plant-based diet made me feel like, and so started getting me reflecting on like how American obesity has increased with fast food, and I think it's because we're eating too much meat, and so having these other grain plant diets incorporated into the American diet seems to be very helpful. Here are my references, and thank you for listening to my presentation.